All right, so here we are back again.
Here we are.
The last scoop of 2019.
The last scoop of the decade.
The last of the decade. It's like the sixth one.
We're
But
on
it's
like
also
8
the
or
last.
9
Okay.
now.
All right.
Yeah.
So we had talked about last week. This is technically still just a week apart because we put one up on Monday and we'll put this up at the end of the week.
Yes. Yeah.
But we talked about how we communicate out and how we try to get information out. But this week we wanted to spend a few minutes talking about how do we help families communicate and how do we help families be able to talk. And I think we're coming at this from a couple different assumptions.
Yeah. I think 2 assumptions that we are making with this video are the first one is that you as a parent want your student to share with you the things that are deep inside, but they don't know how to really communicate with you. And
your students actually want to feel comfortable talking to their parents. Like students wish they could talk to their parents, but they don't know if their parents will understand or if their parents will be upset. So there is those lack of communications. And I know this because I hear this from both sides. Like,
oh, yeah.
You talk to students like, I wish I could talk to my parents because I'm around them a bunch, but I don't think they understand. I think they understand more than you think. So we want to talk about this as far as how do we open up communication inside of a family so that students feel comfortable talking to their parents about difficult things.
I think the hardest thing that is like if this isn't part of your like family culture already, having these conversations, it's going to be a little bit awkward at first.
Yeah.
But like all things, like the more you do it, the less awkward it's going to be. So like if you're like, I don't know how to like have that kind of conversation, or I don't know how to like get into the habit of making this not just like a one-off awkward thing, like you just have to keep doing it. And then the more you do it, the less awkward it becomes.
Yeah, the consistency is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Like it just needs to keep happening, and it will be awkward at first, and it gets easier and it gets better and people start to open up. Like you see that in a small group, especially.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about a small group of guys and at first you start to talk about, okay guys, what are the struggles you're going through? It's super embarrassing the first time, and then as you build a relationship with a group, all of a sudden you're just like, all right guys, I need help, and they're willing to talk, and not just
and that's what like every conversation, the difference between like a freshman small group and a senior small group is night and day, because you've put in the awkward moments and you've had those conversations and you are able now to have that kind of communication. So if the first time you try to do this is awkward or whatever, just stick with it and it does get easier.
Students know this about me, but enjoy the awkward moments. Like,
I struggle with that.
You struggle with it, but there is there's some humor in some of the awkwardness. You're usually not laughing at the time, but when you look back, you're just like, that was really awkward and that was funny. But I think a couple tips that we could share as far as notes on how do we help and how do we start communication going is approaching things as a conversation. Yeah. That it's a two-way street, and that it's not just a son, let me tell you what you need to know, but truly learning to listen to what your kids are saying and what's going on in their lives. Most problems, I think, when they break down to, well, my kids don't just listen, or my parents just don't understand me. And it goes both ways. Like the parents will complain about kids and kids will complain about parents. And it's how the other side sees, it's how one sees the other. And so, that's the old, I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I should listen twice as much as I speak. Listening is the number one key. I think another key factor is how you respond to what is said.
Yeah, and this is a tough one too, because they might say something that you are just like, what? Why would you ever think that was okay? Or why would you think that was the right thing to do? And it's hard sometimes to come into a difficult conversation or even just like a new situation and like having all sorts of your life experience and wisdom, and students don't have that. And we forget that so many of the life lessons that we've learned come from the mistakes and the questions and the weird thoughts and things that we did.
Part of the humor of being a parent is rolling your eyes when you're like, you did what?
Yeah.
And it's those moments where you both want to scream and laugh and maybe cry all at the same time.
Maybe not like laugh or like in front of them and let them know that you think it's hilarious, because like you want to be,
Yeah. Oh, I have so many memories coming into my head about like things that the kids did that you just wanted to laugh at and you couldn't. because you had to keep a straight face at the time and you had to be stern, and you're like, how did you think this was okay? I know for me, last week I was talking to a student just about life, and they mentioned birds. Like, I hate birds, and when it comes to how do I react, like, I wanted to say, like, who hates birds?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Why would you hate birds? And instead I said, I just stopped and I was like, okay, so what about birds makes you afraid of birds? And it opened up this conversation about like the shape of their beaks and this fear of like movies and birds poking out their eyes and Alfred Hitchcock and the birds, and this thing just continued on and on and on. So how you respond can determine whether a conversation will continue or stop.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Another thing that is important to keep in mind is that communicating with teens today is different than how it was when even you were a teen. You know, things have changed in the world. A lot has changed in the world, even since when I was a teenager, which doesn't seem that long ago. And it's just insane how different the world is for our teenagers today than it was for me or for you or for whoever, just because the world is changing so fast. And so we need to think differently about that. And one of the big things is that your students want to be talked to as another adult. And, you know, there definitely aren't adults. And there are times in their lives when you need to be their parent. But there's that level of coming to them at a level they're not little kids anymore, and they can understand, and you can tell them the reasons why you did the things that you did, and respect that they can hopefully understand that.
Yeah. And recognizing that things are different today than it was when you were a kid allows them to be an expert on things.
Oh yeah.
And so looking to your kids, say, like, can you teach me about this? Like, I ask kids all the time about, how do I use my iPhone? And even there's times where I still somewhat know what I'm doing, but I'll ask a kid to let them feel empowered and feel like they know what's going on, feel like they're the expert and they have something to teach me. Allows, like, it just opens up the conversation again, both sides talking.
You think about like apps like Snapchat or Instagram or whatever. It's one thing for an adult to go and say, like, I saw this like really scary thing about what's happening on Snapchat. And then your kid kind of like rolls their eyes because, you know, they're the expert on this. This is what they're immersed in every day. But if you went in and said, like, hey, what are some of the scary or dangerous things or things that people could do improperly on these or whatever, and they're going to be able to tell you those things, and it's a whole lot different because now they are coming from a place of like, well, I heard about this, or, you know, they know all about it. But if you are trying to come and say, you know, I remember a time from when I was in either elementary school or middle school, my mom came home with this email printed off about how Pokemon was like the most evil thing in the world, and then we were all just like, Mom, let me tell you
that
about
explains
Pokemon.
So much about you.
And then she didn't end up like burning our Pokemon cards or whatever, because she listened to us and was able to hear like what is actually Pokemon, and it wasn't the thing that she had in her email forward.
Yeah. I think another big item on this is good conversations usually aren't planned.
Oh yeah.
I think there's times where it just happens.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, your kids are saying so much to you without you even knowing that they're saying so much to you. Like, again, it goes back to the listening. If you just listen, you can pick up so much on what their dreams and fears and desires for life and the interests. Like, it's one of those things where if I'm really paying attention, I'm really bad at this, but if I'm really paying attention, I should never have to ask my wife for like a Christmas list.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If I were good at making notes of things that she said as she goes along the way, and like the same thing goes true with our families. Like, if we're truly listening, and if we create that culture where we listen to each other, and it starts with the parent, but teaching that skill to your child as well is huge.
Yeah, and again, going back to, you know, the idea of how these conversations aren't usually planned and it's something that just happens. That means that you have to have a culture and a place in your home where your kids know that they can have these kind of conversations, that they can have serious conversations, they can have deep conversations. So that's part of making it a habit, and making it part of your daily life. You know, maybe the planned ones that you do initiate lead to the unplanned ones that are more fruitful.
What would you say are conversations that every parent needs to have with their kids?
I think the most basic and simple one is just the schedule, like what's going on in our family this week, this month, so that everybody's on the same page. And that's a really simple one. It's probably one that you're already doing, but just making sure that everybody knows what's happening so there's not any surprises that pop up.
Yeah, knowing what kids want to go to.
Yeah.
Like there's weeks that Becky and I do this well, and there's weeks that we don't, and then things pop up, and you're like, "What do you mean you have after hours this week?" And like, it was on the calendar, and I was like, but
see, ours
like,
is always, it wasn't in the calendar because I'm terrible at that.
But you forget what's going on, and so finding out like, hey, what do you want to like? What events are you hoping to go to as youth groups talking about what events? And then if something's going on as a family, to let them know well in advance to say, hey, well, we're supposed to be going here that same week or that same time. And so it's not going to work out, and allowing them to handle that disappointment over time as opposed to, what do you mean we're having dinner at grandma's? I thought I was going to laser tag. Like that would just like.
I just had a conversation today with a parent who is already letting their kid down, that knowing like, hey, you can't do mission trip this year because we have a big family trip that can't be moved that week. And so, that's like a 6 months of letting the kid rather than like the week before, hey, you're not going anymore.
I know you're going to turn that application, but don't.
Yeah.
Conversations about faith.
Yeah.
Asking your kid, what are they learning at church? But more than what they're learning at church, what are you learning in your quiet time with God? Mm-hmm. And then again, you telling them, like, set that example of, it's important for me to spend time in God's word. And so this is what God was teaching me as I was reading today.
And those are ones, again, that just get easier over time. We've seen that in small groups. Like, I remember the first year that I had with my small group, like asking, like, where did you see God at work this week? Or what is God teaching you? And it was a lot harder. But now that they know, like, this is a conversation that we have regularly, and so it's a lot easier. Yeah. So these conversations do get easier over time.
As you get kids to talk, I'd talk about their dreams, about their fears. What are the things that they worry about?
You've probably heard some of these.
Teenagers are super anxious about a lot of things. What? And getting them to talk about it helps.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If they're trying to deal with it on their own, they become basket case. I become a basket case if I try dealing with it on my own. And so the more I can talk about it, the more people who want to hear why I'm struggling or what it is. And it goes back to that response. Like, how do I respond to it?
Yeah.
If I make it say, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
That doesn't help, because it is a big deal to them, and they don't know how to make it not a big deal.
And you don't have to try to fix every one of those problems, every one of their worries or their anxieties or the stuff that they're struggling with. Like, you might not have an answer to those things, and that's okay. They probably don't want you to try to say, well, if you just did this, it would fix it. But being able to just listen is going to go a long way.
Big ones that every family needs to talk about are, as kids get older, talking about cell phones, social media, internet usage, setting rules, setting standards, saying, hey, guess what? You have a phone, but it's our phone, and so we need access to it because the desire is to protect you. We want to trust you, and we want to see you prove yourself trustworthy. But setting standards for what they're doing on the internet and making sure that, hey, this is a great tool, but it's also dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we're going to have a lot more to say about this in a future series of videos. So if you as a parent are feeling like, I don't even know where to start with this kind of stuff, don't worry. We have some great stuff that we are looking forward to sharing with you, just not right now.
Not right now, because we have to break it up into several weeks and figure that out.
Yeah, because your kids, whether they're in middle school or high school, this is when hopefully you've already been having these conversations, but you need to be having these conversations about sexuality and dating and pornography and all sorts of stuff like that, because whether you think that it's part of their lives or not, it is. And it's a part of teenage life now, and it may not have been in years past, but it's just all encompassing. It's everywhere. No matter how much you do to try to protect your home and to protect your devices, it's out there, and it's something that needs to be talked about.
Talk to your kids about dating and relationships well before they're ready to be dating and in relationships. But like, what was it like for you? What would you have done differently? Like, getting into those things that might make your kids cringe a little bit, but at the same time we'll be thankful that they heard, like, oh, okay, so this is set standards for me. I think another good one, potentially the last one, unless you've come up with other ones, is just stopping to ask the question of, how can I do better? How can I help you? What can I do more for you? And so as a parent, to actually like humbly say, I can be a better parent, and is there something I can do to help you more? Or how can I help you with life? Or what questions do you have? To open that up is just it puts you out there to say, I'm here. so that your kids hopefully know that you are a safe place and a safe person for them to talk to.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Just allowing them to know that like you aren't this perfect person on a pedestal, but that you realize your own weaknesses and your own struggles. I think that is something that every student needs to see in their parents.
Yeah. All the things that we talk about here again, it goes back to conversation. It's a two-way street. And so it's you sharing your life. And if you want your kids to open up about their life, you need to open up about yours at a level that they can handle. But it's sharing both ways. And so letting your kids know that you struggle too. You have sin struggles, you have difficulties, and you went through some of the same struggles that they were going through, or maybe you have some of the same struggles currently that they're dealing with. It's great for families to talk.
Yeah. And it's sometimes a difficult thing to get started. You might feel like it's too late for your family, but it's never too late. And keep sticking with it and keep trying to have these conversations, because I promise that it does get easier and it's important, and your kids will really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well past the 10-minute mark, but we've been short the last couple of weeks, so we can go long.
They were rollover minutes. So we banked them
minutes,
for a few weeks, and now we hit you with a nice long one.
So all right, so thanks. You got a couple weeks to watch this because we'll be back after Christmas. So
yeah, have a Merry Christmas, and
Merry Christmas.
See you later.